סיפור זה מוקרא במסגרת פרויקט פאנפיקים לנובי גוד 2022 של פורום ספרים. כל הדמויות המתוארות שייכות למפתחים המקוריים שלהם, כולל דרגון אייג' אינקוויזישן וצוות נפלא של ביקוב מהאחים סטרוגצקי. Bullheaded Much. It was a beautiful morning in Skyhold. The crows were making their usual fuss, soldiers were training, Vivian was catching up on fashion news regarding hats, trying to find something that will make Cole look less like a fashion disaster, and Dagna and her new friend tinkered happily, when the sounds of a brawl, which definitely wasn't planned, disturbed the peace. The amount of cussing in Kunlat, Tevin, Russian, and Common was impressive, and something very heavy hit something equally heavy. Those who rushed to see what happened found the resident one-eyed Kunari trying to punch the life out of a human nearly as large as him. «Отпусти меня, Йоганыч! Я его сейчас на говядину пущу!» Bikov growled as he was pulled apart from the iron bull. «Let go of me, Krem! I'm about to kick him so hard, he'll fly back to the stars that spat him down!» The above-mentioned Kunari wasn't about to let the issue slide. Splash! What is the meaning of this? Both males, now wet, turned to stare at a very angry Adar, who held a bucket in her hand. Let's take a step back and find out how we ended up in such a situation, said Vorik, and took a sip of his ale. The crowd in Herald's Rest snickered as the storyteller began his tale, especially with the key characters sitting among them, still nursing the proof that the story was completely true. 3 days earlier. «Вещанты кафас», Dorian signed. «Безобразие», agreed Bikov, then added something in his strange language, from which Dorian only understood the word «dracon». Apparently, when the situation got too emotional, the strange human switched to his native tongue. He asks if those things are common here. Cole translated. The half-spirits seem to understand languages on some intuitive level, thus being quite valuable in such situations. Luckily, not that common, Dorian muttered. I mean, look at my robes. Cole translated back. Bikov sighed and pulled a sewing kit from his backpack, then made a come here gesture at Dorian. The mage obediently sat by the large human and let him fix the torn hem, using the reprieve to fix his own hair. Sarah, who watched the whole interaction, started giggling. Another bull to watch over fancy wind. Cole translated that too. Bikov calmly put his sewing kit aside, made a snowball, and threw it at Sarah. The elfin girl giggled again. In her books, hard-working, slightly grim humans will close enough to the people to be acceptable. Well, that's still not a reason to brawl, is it? The dwarf chided, making two of the present to look sheepish. But we still ended up with a fist fight on our hands, so maybe we should look a little further back. After all, it seems that there was a certain someone present at the scene who wasn't a usual member of our first-line expeditions. Several months earlier. It all started not too long ago. A strange metallic vessel fell from the sky, carrying 2 humans. Luckily, it landed in the hinterlands, so the locals were quick to respond and notify the Inquisition. Despite having no common language, they seemed friendly enough, and, well, human enough. One of them, a green redhead built like a Kunari, introduced himself as Alexei Bikov. The name sounded Tevin, but any attempt to converse in the language failed. The other, a lithe brunette, Gregory Dauge, had a happy-go-lucky attitude, and often Bikov was seen holding him back like one would do to a kid, while smiling patiently. During the first couple of days, the locals avoided the vessel, and the stranger stayed in the shelter of the vessel, wisely choosing to avoid possible confrontation. But a couple of days later, the larger of the two went to the market, trying to trade strange cloth for food. the first contact was made. Later, the larger of the two joined a hunting party, carrying something that wasn't a sword or a staff, made lots of noise, and apparently was a very good weapon. Now, while refugees, in general, were common, the vessel, the cloth, and the weapons were deemed interesting enough to earn a visit from the Inquisitor. By the time Adar and her field team arrived, the redhead made himself a reputation for attacking anything that looked at him in the wrong way. So far, 3 wolves, 1 bear, and 1 unlucky renegade Templar. But also willing to do any kind of heavy-duty work, which was appreciated by the guards. The brunette also managed to pick up the local language quickly, and was currently assisting the healer in improving tinctures. They seemed to fit in, but still were seen looking at the skies with sadness. Their first contact with the Inquisition went surprisingly well. The newcomers stared at the representatives of higher authority for a moment. Then, the huge redhead, who later introduced himself as Bikov, pulled out a strange cookie from his pocket and offered it to Cole, saying, "Kid, eat." When Dorian made a snide comment about it, another cookie was shoved in his face, with the comment, "Big kid, eat." The brunette Dauge snickered and then chatted his friend softly in their native language. "I like him already, boss," Bull commented amusedly. "Lost, strange skies, strange people, ship damaged, love, so much love." Cole gave his assessment, mouth full of crumbs. This pretty much sealed the deal. Dauge was a geologist, but with some skills in field medicine way beyond the current knowledge. And Bikov turned out to be an engineer, in addition to the larger human being a formidable hand-to-hand fighter. So, all in all, they were useful as agents. Later, the two men told of the world they left behind. Their land reigned through something called communism, which was a bit like the Kun, but not quite, or the people they left behind. And after the first time seeing Dorian cuddle with Bull, and Adar bringing flowers to Josephine, something melted in Bikov. He told about laws forbidding any such things among men. Dorian was very supportive afterwards. About his love to Dauge, ever since saving him from a terrible desert storm. About finding a woman who was willing to be part of a cover marriage. The resemblance between their couple and the adorable Mage Kunari one didn't go unnoticed. Sarah was the first one to glue horns to Bikov's head when he was asleep, which resulted in a humorous chase around the yard, and it only got better from then on. Dauge and Dorian actually bonded over comparing their bull-headed significant others. Bikov made a face at Warwick for mentioning that part. The dwarf smirked and kept on talking. So, as you can see, things started so well, which again brings us to the question, what got into Tiny and Smiley to make them act like that? So, the two settled in Skyhold, with Dagna having a field day with their vessel, and some rough schematics made by Bikov. Solas going crazy over their star charts, the surgeon going crazy anytime anyone tried to utilize Dauge's skills and knowledge outside the infirmary. As time passed, Bikov was trusted with small battle missions. He was assigned to Dorian, Sarah, and Cole, aka the local misfits, quickly assumed command of the squad despite being new to this world, and took his kids for a round of walkies. Even though the redhead rarely smiled and pretended to be cold and gruff, he really cared for his team and turned out to be a worse mama hen than Cram. This resulted in better outcomes from outings, being allowed to check high-risk leads, and just by his luck that they ran into a high dragon. Never one to back off from a challenge, be it a planet full of burning dust called Venus, or a creature. Bikov charged forward, shouting something along the lines of, "If I die here, consider me a communist," whatever that meant. Luckily, the misfit group made it out alive and well, bruises don't count. So, after patching everyone up and ending up in a snow fight with a hyper Sarah, They made it back to the nearest outpost to request assistance in harvesting. Later that night, when the party gathered near their assigned tents, Bikov opened his backpack. "Here you go. I saved you some souvenirs. After all, it was a very big fight, right? For you, Dochka. Some shiny scales." He always referred to the young woman as Dochka, apparently a cultural thing. Sarah didn't mind, especially when she was given a handful of small scales. "Malish, have this." Cole got a lovely piece of webbing, cool to the touch. "And for you, Synok, something to match your sharp wit." He pulled a dragon's tooth tied to a string to be worn as a necklace. "Great, now I'm feeling all mushy," Dorian complained as they hugged Bikov in thanks. He really didn't like being treated like a kid. Really. Not with his own issues. Oh, fine. He has imprinted like a duckling and finally enjoyed a proper parent figure in his life. "Wait," he gave Arwind. "What?" Dalish interfered. "Krem, do you remember the last time someone sent Josephine a—" "I know, and the Inquisitor just—" "Who's telling the story here?" Very gave the two charges a stern look. "But yes, you can see the problem. But none of the group did. Sarah isn't a Kunari. Cole isn't a Kunari. Bikov might be the size of one, but not a Kunari either. And no matter what the chantry says, being a Kunari isn't something you catch along with cooties. So Sparkler might have some Kunari in him. Occasionally. Too often." "We get the point," someone yelled. "Yep." So there was no one to defuse the cord. Therefore, 3 days later, they returned to Skyhold. Bikov immediately headed to Dauge, missing his precious friend, while Dorian rushed to the tavern to tell Bull about the dragon. Moments later, a furious roar made them break their embrace in shock, just in time to see the Iron Bull heading their way with murder in his eye. A shocked Dorian stood behind him, trying to figure out what happened, hands still holding the necklace Bikov made him earlier. "He's mine! You hear me?" the Kunari spat at the redhead. "What are you talking about?" "Dorian is mine!" "Who's arguing? I'm with Gregory anyway." Bikov missed the first punch to his face, but he wasn't about to allow the second one to land. "Охренел совсем!" The stress was high enough for him to slip back to Russian. "That's enough, Bull," Dorian piped in. "I'll deal with you later." Bull turned to his partner and missed a punch from Bikov. "Не смей орать на пацана!" "You're the last person to tell me what to do." And the two went at each other's throats, punching and kicking, until Adar decided to break them up personally. "Well, things seem to be clearer now, ain't they?" Varric smiled at his audience. "Two birds of a feather, butting heads instead of talking." Bull and Bikov had the decency to look sheepish, facing the furious Inquisitor. "Someone tell me what happened." "You!" she pointed at Dauge. "What happened?" "I was just hugging Alexei when Bull came charging, yelling about Dorian. That's it," the brunette replied. "You!" Adar pointed at Dorian. "I came to show Iron Bull my dragon tooth necklace. Thought he'd appreciate having a bit of a dragon on me, but he went all crazy." "Idiots," the female Kunari signed. "All of you." "Why me?" Bull asked. "I'm the one who found out his—" "Shut up. You, of all people, should know that such an obscure tradition of our kind might not be known even to Dorian, who's been with you for a while. Not to mention two guys from Void knows where." "What tradition?" Bikov asked. "For the Kunari, a dragon's tooth is a symbol of two souls bound together." "Bound?" The large human didn't understand the word. «Свадьба, Алексей. Ты подарил ему обручальное кольцо», Dauge explained. «С какого перепугу? Бык, баран ты несчастный! Как ты мог на меня такое подумать?» «You thought I did what?» Dorian joined them in indignation. The sun shone brightly over Skyhold. Two dark-haired humans stood side by side, cleaning their respectful partners' bruises and cuts from a recent scuffle. They kept on chiding them for being a general disgrace, being culturally insensitive, and not being careful with their precious, beloved selves. Vivian looked in slight jealousy at Cole's hat, now decorated with dragon webbing. Sarah ran her hands over her new shiny stash, already deemed too precious for prank use. Cole himself listened in delight to the love in the air. The level of craziness in the fortress dropped to acceptable levels. Until next time. Postscriptum. Any Russian phrases have translation available at the link to the original fanfic. Thank you for listening.